my story. Hey guys, it's afternoon where I am, and I am starting my story. And I've decided that I'm probably going to have to do this in. Oops, it's very loud. I'm probably going to have to do this in a couple of different sequences for several reasons. One, it is a lot of information. Um, there's no way I could do it, I don't think, in one setting. I'm going to try to keep them at about 20 minutes apiece. And I'm writing a book, and I have been for a little bit. Um, I was actually encouraged by my previous associate pastor. He's gone on to heaven now. But he was a fellow fighter in my right to life, or my plight against helping save the unborn. I could just put it that way. But anyway, I just want to explain like how I'm going to do it and why I'm doing it this way. Um, and like I said, the main thing is it is a lot to comprehend, and I'm just going to have to break it down um, into like parts, I guess, like stages of my life, and it might blend together a little bit here and there. But um, another reason is because I think that I can only record 20 minutes at a time. With so when I download it, to put it on YouTube, um, I think it only allows 20 minutes. So anyway, that's another reason. And also, it is going to be exhausting to me to talk about some of this stuff. Some of it's great. I mean, honestly, I've had a great life in some aspects. And then in some aspects, of course, it's not so great. So it's an emotional roller coaster to, relive through some of this stuff, especially. Um, and I will give a trigger warning ahead of time. This is for 18 and older, or at least, mature people. Even if it's a teenager, you know, uh, I think maybe they should listen to it, because there's a lot of things in here that maybe you could get out of this that you could avoid in your own life going down some of the same paths. But anyway, I was just going to start with maybe explaining a little bit of my family background, because that was here before I was. Um, and I will do that by saying, on my mother's side of the family, I had my nanny and my pop, which were my maternal grandparents. And I knew um, my mother's brother, and he had two sons. And I was an only child until I was 9, almost 9. I was 8, almost 9. Um, so my maternal grandparents only had 4 grandchildren, 3 boys, and just me, the only girl. So I was definitely spoiled as far as my nanny and pop went, because I was the only granddaughter. Now they weren't, like bad to the other kids or anything. It wasn't that. It was just, I was very close to them. And my grandfather, he fought in World War II, and he was part of the. My grandmother was part of the AMVETS, and she used to take me out to the Veterans Hospital, and we used to entertain for the patients out there. And I'm getting a little ahead of myself on my part in that, but I just wanted to mention that, explaining both sides of my family, that my nanny and I were very, very close, extremely extremely close, as you will hear throughout my story. Sadly, she didn't live as long as I would have liked her to. I was very young when she passed away. Um, but thank God she got to see my first three children at least. But she was like my second mom, and in many aspects, I might have been closer to her in many ways than even my own mother at times. Although I love my mother very much. Um, and then my uncle, well, it would have been my great uncle. It was my grandmother's brother. Excuse me. He lived in Florida, or he moved to Florida with his wife and two children, and um, he was actually a rocket scientist for NASA. And I'll get to him later in the story, and that's why I wanted to explain who he was. And I'll refer to him as Uncle Charles, um, and you'll know who I'm talking about. But that was my mother's uncle, and that would have been my grandmother's brother. So anyway, um, I and then on my father's side of the family, okay, my mother's side of the family did not have much money. They were very, you know, um, they lived humbly. My grandfather was a mechanic. My grandmother used to work in a textile mill, and then she also worked wrapping presents at Belk. And then she actually hurt her back at work and ended up having to have back surgery in her 40s or mid 40s. And back then, back surgery was pretty cruel and gruesome. And they've made great strides in that. But back when she had it done, which was in the early 70s, it was really hard. My grandfather on that side was an alcoholic, and he did run around on my grandmother quite a bit. But my family on both sides, the women just stand by their man and they stay no matter what. And so they lived together until my grandmother passed away a year after my grandfather passed away. So she didn't make it long after he passed away. And they got married when she was like 16. And then she may have been even a little bit, she may have been 15. But it was before my grandfather went off to the war. And a, you know, basically, I think, she had her first baby, my uncle, um, when my grandfather was at war, or shortly after he returned. I'm not real clear on that, if it was before or after. Um, I used to have all of their letters that they wrote back and forth whenever my grandfather was in Germany. He was stationed in France, I think it was. And I could still have them somewhere in my box, but I just don't know where they are. But anyway, I wish I had them. I'd love to read some. They were very romantic, and I loved having that. I loved having those. I need to look for them. But anyway, my other side of the family, that's where the Freemasonry comes in. My mama, which was my grandmother, that's what we call her, mama, and my grandfather, I call him Papa. Um, they had three children. My father was the only son, and they had two girls, so they had three children total. And on that side of the family, it's funny how this works out. My dad was the only boy. Well, he ended up having my little brother. My mom and dad had my little brother, like I said, when I was almost 9. And he um, was the only boy on that side of the family, and the rest were all granddaughters. So the two daughters, or I mean, the two sisters of my dad, which would have been my aunts. One of them, which I'll call Aunt Ree, She had only one daughter. And then my other aunt, who died very early in her life from an asthma attack, she had two daughters, and I'll call her Aunt Georgie. Anyway, um, that side of my family, my grandmother came from the bottom part of the Blue Ridge Parkway area up in Oconee County area. And actually, they came from Virginia originally. Both my grandfather's family and my grandmother's family. Um, and I've done a lot of the research and done the family history and the genealogy and all that stuff back, but on that side of the family. But my dad actually was a basketball player, and my grandma was a basketball player in high school. My dad played for college as well, but my grandma, which is funny back then, thinking about her playing basketball, actually were very wealthy. My great grandfather was a builder. He built bridges and he helped build the biggest bridges there are. There's one in Virginia. There's one in Kentucky, which is actually where he died in Kentucky from a kidney infection building a bridge. My grandmother, excuse me, my great grandmother is 100% Native American. She is Cherokee. And um, she was from up in that area of it's the top of South Carolina, the bottom of North Carolina, right through there on in the reservation in Cherokee there. And so her and my great grandfather, they had like I think 9 kids. Um, and the only ones I really knew was my Uncle Wiley, my Aunt Virginia, who lived in California, by the way, and she was Mormon, and her family, they're all Mormon. And I knew my Aunt Rainey, who lived in Virginia. I knew my Uncle Dick, who still lived in Virginia. So a lot of our family on that side still lived up in Virginia. There are actually a lot of political figures on that side of my family that were governors and senators and other things like that up in Massachusetts and in Virginia. Um, one of my forefathers, well, I call them forefathers. I don't know what you'd call ancestors. I guess that's what you'd call them. Was actually George Mason, who wrote the Bill of Rights or helped write the Bill of Rights. And he was also a 33rd degree Freemason. And there is a college in Virginia um, that is named after him. It's George Mason University. And anyway, so excuse me, I've had this, when the weather changes. I'm sorry about having a cough, but it's just my allergies. But and a dry throat. But I just kind of wanted to acquaint you with the things in my family. Also, my grandfather was a Freemason, and also a high level one, like his, like who I mentioned before. Um, and uh, that whole side of my family are involved in Freemasonry, Eastern Star for the women, Shriners, uh, you know what I mean, that kind of stuff. And a lot of them were in the fire department. Um, and my grandfather actually owned one of the biggest construction companies in our area. And he also helped build bridges. He helped build actually the first original Cooper River Bridge in Charleston. He helped build a bridge where we actually in the area we live in, bridges. He also helped with which my great grandfather also, which maybe that's how he got into doing that, I guess, is through his um, father-in-law, I guess you would say, is because that's what he did. I'm not sure, but um, he also helped with the tunnel in Virginia, helped with building that, and as did my uncle Dick in Virginia. Um, they built the tunnel that I think it was like the first tunnel that went underwater in Virginia up there. Um, it might even be West Virginia. I'm not sure. I remember going in it, and I remember going up there and staying with them. And the funny thing is, all of the family in Virginia and in the area we live in now, they all had, I think, the blueprint of the same houses, and they all had built the same houses that looked very similar, except for just, a couple personal differences like touches. But they all had like the same floor plan, which it's funny. It's like a ranch style with a full basement, not a full basement, but finished basement with usable square footage. And so I don't know how they all got sloped lots like that. I don't know to do that. That's interesting looking back on it. And they also, uh, it was interesting. We also had a lake house side beside each other. It was like my granddad bought a bunch of the property on the lake that was a man-made lake, well, a man-made lake where we live. One of the biggest man-made lakes, other than I believe Lake Olanier. And yeah, so I think it might be the second in line behind that. Hey, baby, my kitten. But anyway, um, my grandparents on that side were wealthy. They did not hurt for money, and even though I was not as emotionally close to them, um, I did know them, and I got a lot closer to my grandmother as I got older. After my grandfather passed away, and uh, I'll get into other reasons later in my story, and you'll understand all that. But I want to stick to just the facts, I guess, right now. I don't want to go off on a bunch of rabbit trails. But yeah, because I'm already at 18 minutes. I guess this will be the family history today. And like I said, I only have one sibling, one brother who is almost 9 years younger than me. My mother was 17 when she had me. My dad was, I think, right at 19. He was in his freshman year of college. And my mom actually um, quit school and went to cosmetology school, and she had me. And she had just had surgery for a hiatal hernia, and the doctors and everybody were trying to tell her not to have me. But this was in 1970, before Roe versus Wade, so I don't know how they were going to do that. But they had mentioned, terminating the pregnancy or whatever, and my mom refused to do it. She just would not do it, and um, I am thankful for that. Thank you, Mom. She's in heaven now, but I love her, and I want to say thank you for my life and thank you for fighting for it. But they got married, and they got married in April of 19. I guess it would have been 70. I think, yeah, because I was born in 1970. So that basically covers that part of my life. And this is, like I said, it's a short footnote of a book that I'm writing. And I don't know how long it's going to take me, but I'm working on it. But anyway, I hope that you, um, I won't say enjoyed, because I don't think getting the background of something is enjoyable, but it has to kind of be said so that you understand the rest of the story and understand, how I grew up. I grew up also from the age of 2. Basically, my grandparents bought the house that I grew up in. It was a nice ranch style house, and I was very fortunate. We had an in ground pool, a basketball court, Um, you know, I was very fortunate in that aspect. So anyway, I just wanted to let you know. Um, Also, my dad was an alcoholic. That's another thing. So both grandfathers and my dad was an alcoholic, and my dad also ran around on my mother and cheated on her quite a bit, which will come up again later in the story. But again, this is just the background. I love my dad very much, but things are what they are. Anyway, I thank you for listening to part one of my story, if you only knew. And like I said, this will be a book one day. So I guess we're just doing a little sneak peek of it. Anyway, I love you guys, and I hope you come back for part two. Talk to you later. God bless you. Please hit like and comment down below so I guess more people can hear it with the algorithm. Because even though this part is boring, there's going to be a lot of stuff coming up in this trilogy, or I don't know how long. I don't know, trilogy is not the word, but um, in this set concession of pieces of story that will make up my story in the end. So I just wanted to say that please come back for part two because it's going to get a whole lot more interesting. Anyway, love you guys. Have a great day.